then why don't we get started here? So happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to the Data Science Hangout, and hope everybody's having a great week. If we have never met before, I'm Rachel Dempsey. I lead our pro community and lead up customer marketing at pos.it. The Data Science Hangout is our open space to chat about data science leadership, questions you're facing, and getting to hear what's going on in the world of data across different industries. And so I like to add, if you are watching this sometime in the future, maybe on YouTube, and we will start to get some of those past weeks up there pretty soon, and you want to join us live, you can just use the link below in the YouTube description to add it to your calendar and join us in the conversation. But at the Data Science Hangout, we're all dedicated to making this a welcoming environment for everybody. We love to hear from everyone, no matter your years of experience, titles, industry, or even languages that you work in. So it's totally okay to just listen in if you want. Maybe you're doing some work on the side and we're just in the background, that's okay. But there's also 3 ways you can jump in and ask questions or provide your own perspective. So for anybody who hasn't been here before, those 3 ways are: you can jump in by raising your hand on Zoom. You can put questions in the Zoom chat. And always feel free to put a little star next to that question if it's something you want me to read instead. Maybe you're in a coffee shop or something. And then we also have a Slido link where you can ask questions anonymously. And so we're doing things a little bit different today, and we're ready for it. We've done this a few times here, but we actually don't have one featured leader today. We are all the featured leaders today. So this will be an open conversation with all of us, and we can all ask each other questions to the broader audience, and kind of jump in and share our experience too. But I'll get us going and kind of kick us off on a topic. But if there's something that's top of mind for you, definitely share it into the chat here too. Lisa, I love it. Yes, finally a featured leader. But something I've been thinking a lot about lately is, of course, presentations, because the pos.it conference is next week. And I know there's been a lot of preparation happening in terms of talks and slides. So I thought that could be a fun starting point for us, to hear like, what lessons have you all maybe learned along the way in giving conference talks or even presentations at your own company. And I'm just curious if anybody has some tips or things to share with us. I see some things in the chat about gifts.
I was trying to drop in a funny gift, but it doesn't work.
Could you repeat the question? I came in like halfway through it being asked.
Yeah, so I was just kind of starting off the conversation with everybody about presentations, because pos.it conference is top of mind for me with it happening next week. And to just understand if anybody had any tips or lessons learned in giving conference talks, or the way that you do your slide preparation as well. Okay, Abigail, I might call on you first because I just read yours first. Is that okay?
Yes, I'm in a coffee shop, so tell me if you can't understand me.
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So look, just this whole approach of like, look, I'm a nerd. I like coding. I want to show people code. But like that's just never the answer. I mean, like you think it's gonna be the answer, but really it's like reverse engineering what is gonna be useful to my audience. And not treating this as like this is an opportunity for me to talk, but treating this as like, what is it that's actually going to be useful in somebody's life?
Absolutely. That's great. Mike, I see you had your hand raised too. I didn't notice that before. You want to jump in here?
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, Abigail's advice is absolutely spot on. But we've had articulation training. So articulation is a consultancy group who've been working with pos.it to help the speakers kind of get ready for pos.it Conf. And the advice has been absolutely fantastic. I've fundamentally changed what my slide deck and presentation looks like from before I started. What they got us to think about is like, what is the hook? So what is the thing that you're going to try and draw people's attention in? Because we're all dreadfully distracted by everything in the room. And so you want to hook people in. And then what are, if you like, 3 key items that you're going to want them to remember later. And then once you've got those things, and you may or may not have a call to action at the end of the presentation. But once you know what is your hook, so what is the key theme, and then what are the 3 kind of things that you want people to remember afterwards, only then kind of flesh out each of those 3, and then think about what is the visuals or the cues, code, images, whatever you want that support those 3 elements. I think, like many people, I kind of was used to opening up PowerPoint and jumping in and just wow, loads and loads of text, and it's really, really hard to then edit that down. Whereas if you step away from PowerPoint or Keynote or whatever it is you're using, or even Quarto, and just think about what are those things that I've just articulated then. And I used a mind map tool, which allows me to think about, what are those things, and then explode each of those and go, what are the topics, or what things must I remember to say about those? But then kind of work back from that. And once I've thought that through, then I open up PowerPoint, and it has, as I say, it's turned around what I've done.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. I remember that from last year too. And I just took like a bunch of sticky notes. I remember sitting down at my kitchen table and just writing like as many ideas as I had about the talk and just putting it all over the table, and then trying to like organize those thoughts a bit into little groups, and then thinking from then, what would the presentation look like too? Hey, Amanda, I see your hand raised. Want to jump in?
Yeah, so full disclosure, I used to be an educator. So I have a lot of experience with keeping people engaged, especially when there's a lot going on. The conference is busy. Some people are there virtually, and you want them to listen to what you're saying and focused on you. So definitely as few words as possible on the slide. And something that our now hybrid world has given us the opportunity to do is put a code or a link on your first slide to your slides and your notes. So you can tell people, hey, this is available to you. So you don't need to be frantically writing notes if you don't need to. Everything's in there. Why don't we just talk? And then keep it very, very simple. And that's going to help people focus on what you're saying more when they have that relief, like, I don't need to write everything down. This is available to me.
Great points. I will try and catch up in the chat too, but I see, Honest, you had your hand raised as well.
Yes, so this isn't earth-shattering, but it's easier to remember, and it's more interesting to listen to when your presentation has a story. So just to remind people when they think about preparing their presentation, if they can share a story, because that will capture attention and people will enjoy it more.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying this image you put in the chat too, Jake, about like examples of a bad slide and a good slide. Maybe there's some way I can share that with the YouTube recording too.
Yeah, absolutely. I just have a really hard time when someone puts just a wall of text up. It's a little hard to follow. So yeah, I think bolding is really helpful too. So not just change a color, but make it bold.
The other thing was like visuals like have a limited number per slide. It's easy to overwhelm the audience with a billion things that they need to look at. Oh, and some text. So the things that I've done for my slide deck at the minute is have like one big visual and one small amount of text in big font. Repeat and be consistent in how those things look. And like consistent visual design also just helps people kind of like just go, it's okay, I don't need to fret that this is a different animation style, or that things are different styles. It's just like you can concentrate on the actual words.
I found that the big images for a slide really helped me remember a presentation too. Like even my own talk last year about community building, I was thinking like, what were my 4 main points? And in my head, I pictured those 4, like the big images on a slide. And then I'm like, okay, I can remember. Let's see, any other thoughts in the chat that somebody wants to jump in and share here too?
So I just got a preview of Laura Gast's talk, and it's going to be awesome. It's talking about all of this. She's talking about kind of the cognitive research that like helps you kind of focus people. So I highly recommend it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely have to add that one to the schedule. Yeah, I feel the anxiety we all have about multiple talks happening at one time, trying to add them all. One topic or one follow-up question on the topic of presentations, I was curious for you all, when you're putting together slides for internal presentations, do you ever send that information out ahead of time, like, or with a summary before a meeting? Or is it usually in the meeting that's the first time people see it? I never know sometimes, like sending something out ahead of a meeting, are people actually even going to go through it? Or do you assume that they will?
I would say yes, ahead of time, but usually I feel like the kind of storytelling streamlined talk that like you would do at this conference is very different from the kind of slide decks I tend to send out at work, or that get sent around at work. The ones at work, they're information dense. They have a lot of numbers, a lot of tables, a lot of charts. Like you're intending to like spend time with it and like read it and stare at the numbers and understand the report out or the results of the test, or whatever. Which is very different than this sort of talk, where I think than like the pos.it talk, where they're encouraging us to have minimal stuff on the screen and people are supposed to listen to our words, right? So I think it's super important for like information dense decks that are kind of half a document to be read and half to be talked through, and as opposed to like this sort of conference where I think the decks will be considerably less information dense.
I guess I'm trying to also figure out what's the difference then in presenting a story to people in a conference and getting them to understand what you're saying versus like getting your colleagues to understand the key story behind the data too.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that because like I kind of wonder how useful, like we have an internal conference here for analysts, and I kind of was telling some folks, you know, maybe something like Articulation Inc. coming to us before the next internal conference would be good. But that's because for that conference, it's a lot of people reporting out of their area of expertise. So I guess like people like teams are talking to teams that don't usually work in them. So like a giant blast of numbers and data is out of context, and you kind of need like a storytelling would be helpful. Whereas like if it's your own team and you're just kind of like, people already know what you're kind of heard what you've been talking about for a couple of months, and then you're just showing like, well, here's what happened with the A/B test. I think it can be more information dense. So I think it really depends on the audience and how familiar they are with stuff beforehand. I feel like I'm dominating the last 2 minutes, so I will let someone else.
No, it's helpful. Daniel, I thought you had some chats, or you had something in the chat here about presentations for leadership. Would you want to jump in?
Yeah, so, and I apologize for the background noise. I like to keep my slides very light. I like to use lots of images, use the 5 C's of color and whatnot. But when you're meeting with leadership, you have a very short amount of time to convey a bunch of information. So what I will usually do is take all of the images from my slide deck and put them into a sales slip. It's usually 4 or 5 pages, but it has all of the detail that you're going to cover in the presentation for both. So when you send out both, now they can see the slide deck, but they can also see all of the detail that you're going to be providing, all of the backup and all of the narrative prior to the meeting. So then they come in prepared and they can ask really good questions. And for me, it's been pretty successful.
That's a great point. Thank you. I was putting a question out into the chat to say, like, if there are certain questions that everybody has and wants to ask everybody here, feel free to put those in there too. I see there's a lot of thoughts here shared on the presentation topic, but like a follow-up one on that was, I think, from Samir, if you want to jump in here and ask that to everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Hi, everyone. Samir here. So I think like I've been through so many presentations myself giving them, but every time I give a presentation, there's always those jitters that I have. And I kind of wanted to hear, like, out of curiosity, how do you personally deal with those like presentation jitters that you get right before it or even during it?
It looks like George has some thoughts for this. Or is that a separate question, George?
No, I do have some thoughts.
Okay, cool.
I took some training actually when I worked at HealthNet, giving a presentation to our execs, and what was helpful was really the power poses that they had us do, which are like so like weird when you start doing them. Yeah, Mark, something like that, like these power, you know, you get in your chair, you get all like make your body big. There's like different ones that I'm sure many of you have heard of those, right? And you do them. But for me, that helps a lot, kind of get rid of jitters. There's something like, it's almost like doing yoga in a way, because like you're stretching your body, you're breathing, getting the blood flowing. But aside from that, the other thing that kind of calms my jitters is rehearsing it to death. So even if it's just a 5-minute speech or a 15-20-minute speech, I rehearse it and refine it to where I don't need a lot of words. But if I have the extra time, I certainly can fill it. But yeah, I think rehearsing it and subtracting from the things I'm saying and only providing what's needed is kind of like how I feel more confident going into it.
Absolutely. I always remember that one. And I've been using lately what you said, Ted, to kind of shift your is it to shift your nervousness to excitement?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's like if you think of it as nervousness, that disconnects you from the audience, but if you think of it as excitement, that's like, more fuel for you to connect.
Yeah, no, I definitely used that one last week. I was giving a maid of honor speech and I was thinking of it, everything I learned from articulation and putting that into the maid of honor speech too, and trying to shift the nervousness into excitement.
So another thing is, I think it's natural to feel nervous. I think everybody feels nervous. So, if you don't, then, that's possibly a different sign. But the other thing is that if you have practiced, right, then as you're getting up to do the actual performance, as it were, remember back that, before you did all that practice, things were a lot worse, right? So you've come a long way since that first time you even thought of doing this presentation till now. So if you've done the practice and you've got that far, you're good to go.
Definitely. Deepsha, I see your hands raised.
This is a trick that's helped me because I read it somewhere that if you're chewing gum right before your big presentation, it kind of tricks your brain that because you're chewing something, you're having lunch, like nothing must be wrong, you're just like eating like normal. And maybe it's placebo effect, maybe it's real, but it has helped me every time. So I carry a tissue paper right before put it in my pocket real quick before going on the stage. But that's actually helped my jitters a lot. And maybe it's just like takes all your nervous energy to like chewing and like your jaw hurts later, but it's helped me a little bit.
Love it. Yeah. And thank you, Alan, for the encouragement in the chat here. Yes, everybody is going to do great. Let's get off of the nervousness conversation because everybody's going to crush it. It's going to be awesome. But I saw, Luke, you had a question about Quarto in the chat. You want to jump in? I think it is about if people are building slides in Quarto. Oh, maybe we can't hear you. But Luke's question was curious, how many presenters are building slides in Quarto? I see Deepsha's hand raised. I see Ted, you unmuted. Does that mean you are?
Yeah. Sorry, I am slow to find reactions.
No worries.
Just curious, is it working now?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Well, that's great. Okay. I know personally I've used it a few times and I've enjoyed it. But when it came to something I had to have a animation in, I had to go back to PowerPoint because I'm not quite that advanced yet. But I've also been lucky. I go to the Southern California R user group, and Emil happens to be there and does his slide. He's done his SlideCraft posts, as well as he's done the presentation on SlideCraft a few times, and they're really good.
Definitely. If you wouldn't mind sharing those in the chat, that would be awesome too. And Deepsha, I know you've given a great talk on Cordo as well, if we want to grab that one and put it in the chat too. Okay, we can shift gears on data visualizations, but I'm really excited to go back and reread some of these comments here in the chat when I have all of my brain power to dedicate to reading the chat too. But another question that I was curious, I'm going in a completely different direction here. But I know something that's come up a lot in past Hangouts is around onboarding. And it's usually talked about in more of like a negative way of like companies doing a bad job of onboarding. And I was just curious to learn from you all, like, what are some of your favorite successful onboarding stories and what made it so great? Because I think there's probably something that we all could learn from hearing those stories. And Jared, I'll kick it off with you because I see you said something right away here.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I think for me, it's just been every role I've taken, if I've kind of been thrown in the deep end, having that lifeline of a mentor, somebody who's been there and can kind of help steer the waters, has always put me in a position to get a lot further, a lot faster, like infinitely, much so. Like I've never felt like I was always having to go at it alone. And then you just kind of gradually transition from, new to semi-experienced or seasoned, that then you can pass that on to the next person kind of coming in. And I haven't had the opportunity to do that as much as I would like, but yeah, that's, I think, my big takeaway.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing. I'm seeing a few comments here in the chat, and Melissa, you said you have one to offer. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I think one of my favorite personal onboarding experiences, my boss handed me this sheet of paper and he was like, okay, tell me your preferred style of being approached. Tell me what your pet peeves are, all of tell me what you would have wanted to tell your last boss that ticked you off, right? So having those kind of candid conversations with people is really important. And then when I got to Peloton, one of the things that our enterprise data team does is creates a user manual. So within somebody's, first couple weeks, they go, okay, here's what makes me tick. Here's, all these things about me and how to approach me, what motivates me, what am I afraid of, what am I really trying to do here? And we love it. We still use that practice today, and it really helps people kind of break out of their shell and make connections when we've got such a large team that's 40 plus people. It really kind of breaks the ice there. So that's a great practice.
That's really interesting. So it's like it's a template that you give to everybody, or
it really shouldn't be. It's really like we keep them archived so everybody can access them on our Google Drive, but we want people to kind of make it their own and have fun with it, and whatever is going to help us understand their personality and how they work.
Well, thank you. Mark, I think I saw something you said around 30, 60, 90 check-ins, maybe. Do you want to jump in?
I was on mute. Yeah, I mean, the job I'm in currently, when I first joined, it was pretty clear, hey, already when you join, here's the plan for 30, 60, 90 days. We have a project for you coming in, and we expect this amount of progress, and we'll check in, and that'll help you get your feet wet, but then also provide sort of this clear direction, rather than, just ambiguous, sit in on meetings and pitch in where you can is very, you'll get up to speed at some point with that method, but it's just a lot quicker, I feel like, with that like plan ahead of time from the hiring manager.
Absolutely. Amanda, sorry, I missed your hand was raised before.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say a lot of times in my experience when you're onboarding, people seem to still be like, they're like worried you're not up to date on the skills, but they've just vetted you on your skills. And so the best thing you can do for somebody is the specifics, like this is how we connect with our server, and this is how you know, the specifics to your area. You know, we have this platform here that requires this funky code. Those are the things that frustrate people the most. And so those are, if you're onboarding somebody, those are the little details that they really need. And then the other thing is that we're doing in my current position is we have markdowns, notebooks, whatever, for all of our meetings that have from all the way from like, here's how you access the spreadsheet. We put it in every single one. So somebody onboarding has the opportunity to just go through this stack of notebooks or whatever and see how people have done things in the past. And that a lot of times those little details are actually in there.
Something I want to get better about when I'm helping onboard somebody or just doing an intro call with them is just reminding myself that they're being thrown so much information right now, and like they're not going to retain every single piece of information. So if I could be the person to actually like tell them a story about a customer or something that they're able to remember, rather than like just throwing more facts at them and giving them more time to like come ask about the facts, but to at least like understand the culture by the story that I'm telling. Let's see, hands were raised. I saw Marcos. I think yours went up first. You want to jump in?
Yeah, it's completely, I'm sorry, I did miss, I'm trying multitasking here, so I missed who was speaking last, but I completely agree with the idea, like when we onboard new data scientists, you know, there's, I kind of assume that they know Python, they know pandas, they know like how to be a data scientist, but they don't know all the quirks of where our data is hidden, like how the weird Parquet files that we use, not weird, but the unique Parquet files that we use to store our data, and how it's organized, how it's organized by date, tables. So we have some very formal SQL training that introduces people to like our kind of enterprise, you know, SQL type tables. But then I have written some Jupyter notebooks that are very much lead. I mean, they're very lead by the nose. They just basically show, and so something they can refer back to later, like how do I load this kind of data? Oh, here it is. I did it in this notebook, right? And so it kind of leads them through step by step, like loading some data, making a toy model, like using some of the quirky tools that we built internally. And I do think that is the most important thing, at least for new data people, is, yeah, we know they can like understand trends and they can do explore data analysis, but like what are the quirks of our system and how can we best help a new hire understand those quirks?
Absolutely. Adrian, I saw your hand was raised.
Hi. Yeah. So a couple of comments, right? That it depends on the size of the organization. You know, typically if you're like an enterprise, there's an onboarding team, right? You really don't have to worry about that. I mean, earlier there was comment made on markdown files, right? Yes, definitely documentation, right, to be able to onboard those team members. But what I found more important is being onboarded even to the culture of the organization. I know in my current role, well, when I joined my current I guess enterprise that I'm with right now, it was so huge. And one of the comments that I asked during my interviews is, will there be learning opportunities to grow, right? To and the interviewer just went, yeah, and then he just kept on going. And I really didn't get why he joked like that. And he just, anyways, I now understand why, because oh my gosh, there's so much enablement in my organization. It's just stupid. Every week, there's just so much. And so now I get it. Had I had a mentor that could have said, oh yeah, there's more than enough of, so I think having or pairing a new hiree with a seasoned employee, a mentor, helps tremendously and to onboard into the culture, because all the technical stuff, that's documentation. we're all smart here. You could read, you can move forward to it. If there's a hiccup, the mentor will be able to support you there. So I think that's my big take on onboarding. Definitely a mentor.
Absolutely. I'll have to go through and watch the recording again and take what's in the chat, but I can see mentor being like one of those that's right at the top of the list here. Jake, I see your hand raised, and then Jordan, I'll call on you after this too.
Yeah, we have a 4-week onboarding at where I work, and it's like drinking from a fire hose. It's where does data come from, data privacy, it's the tools we use, because we use a variety of tools. So I think something that's been really helpful is I added a analytics workflow wrap up. And so it's just like, hey, these nuggets that we mentioned that you might have missed are like very important. And so it just kind of is something that I think they can reference for a while after onboarding. That's kind of how I present it to them is, here's a slide deck, but also like keep it handy, because there's a lot of little things that would make your life a lot easier. So after they've gone through the data comes from and all that other stuff, we just do this wrap up to connect the dots. And that seems to be helpful to folks.
Thank you. And Jordan, you want to jump in here next?
Sure. Yeah, and I think in the same vein as that idea of having a mentor, like having that seasoned veteran who will probably someone within your team or department who will help you get through those sort of things, is also getting some experience and understanding outside of your team, specifically when you have, I've seen a lot of really brilliant programmers get into a new industry and not really know what the data that they're looking at is, or kind of where it's come from or why it matters. So I think like having a good understanding of like the positions that you're probably helping, or in departments that you're probably helping with their data, is just getting to know what are they doing, what are the things that are important to them, and then also it helps with understanding why the terminology they're using doesn't make any sense to you, or why specific data terminology to you just doesn't make any sense to them, and just helping bridge that sort of gap and really getting a better overall experience about what this company is doing, what your goals are, and how you can think about some stuff that isn't kind of directly in front of you as well.
Absolutely. Okay, maybe we'll shift gears a little bit here. I see Zoe, you had asked a question in the chat. Do you want to just ask it live, and then I can call in some people who put answers there too?
Thank you. So we've had a couple of job interviews out. So I work in the NHS in England, and we've had quite a number of them. So it's taken a lot of brain power to get through all the application forms. But what I would like to do is just check with people what kind of experiences that you've had that are really good to use. So I mentioned about tests. We've all kind of agreed from ourselves that tests didn't really work out, and does it really show if somebody's very good? So it's just having that idea. We are restricted by some of the things we have to do, like we must always ask the same question of every single candidate, because it's part of the public sector approach that we have, and we'll have the same amount of time pretty much, unless people have some extra requirements. But it was just ideas from people. It will all be online as well. So, maybe things like questions, because sometimes they can be quite long, can go into the chat, for example. We're going to give them in advance, actually. We're going to go against the grain in our industry and send them out. But other things like that, those little tidbits that people have enjoyed or appreciated.
Yeah, I love that everybody's jumping in on this thread here. Libby, do you want to jump in first?
Sure. I don't remember what I said. Oh, okay. I said that I really enjoy it when I can tell that the interviews that I'm in are focused on me as a person and who I am, and if I'm going to fit, and if I'm a good human being versus my skills, because you can get anybody in there with the skills. Making me feel like who I am matters to the role, and that my soft skills are also valued has been really important for me, because I'm a technical person who has great soft skills. So hearing that those are valued is pretty great. And recently I had a really good interview where I had sent questions ahead of time. I think I had sent 4 questions. I do that a lot. I send things ahead of time as much as possible to help people be prepared for things. And then the interviewer just took my questions and let them frame the interview. Like, I will just go through and answer your questions, and you can answer back to me with, counterpoints or whatever from your experience. And that worked really, really well and made me feel really welcome.
That's great. And Toyin, I see you had some ideas too.
Yeah, I've been through some processes recently for the US federal government. So similar constraints about how fluid you can be, but there is a pilot that they're doing called the SME QA process. And so it's subject matter expert driven. And as part of that process, they allow you to do kind of a use case and provide a coding sample, which is a great way to kind of highlight your skills, because normally it's, like you said, being in the public sector, you're very constrained and don't get to kind of show your individuality and skill set. But I do think there's a fine line between asking individuals to demonstrate their skills and at some point making them feel like they're doing free work in order to prove themselves. And so it's definitely a fine balance.
Definitely. Okay, I see a lot of people jumping in here with some ideas too. So if you want to unmute and add some more context to what you added there, I'll keep my eyes out. I see Jake, Mike, and Abigail, you all added some thoughts. Okay, Abigail, you put another thought. Let's have you read yours too.
Oh, the one I just said. So yeah, so I ask, I read data scientists. There's some standard questions that I ask. I do try to give everybody the same questions. And the answers I get from people with equivalent resumes range from having no idea to like, they give me the right answer. And then they're like, okay, but there's actually a more complicated answer. I'm like, nope, you've got it 100%. We're done with that question. So like, yeah, I mean, it's really important for me to do technical questions. Cause like you see somebody with a resume and it's really incredible. Or you see somebody with a resume, you're like, this isn't that good. But then like, they just know the answers. So we do the soft skills too. But like, I gotta ask technical questions.
Well, thank you all for sharing your thoughts here in the chat. It's nice to get to see them organized on a thread here too. I kind of like this format here in the chat. Bolivar, I see you asked a question about starting a user group and would love to have you jump in here and ask that.
Hello, hi. Well, I've been listening to y'all for a little bit and just while I do other work. Yeah, so I am at Tulane University. I'm a graduate student in the Ecology and Evolutionary Biology department. And the group has been around for a little bit, but it had a COVID hiatus, and now we've rebranded and we call ourselves Twerk. And it's very New Orleans, Tulaneans who enjoy art coding. And I'm just one of the kind of collaborators, organizers, and trying to, workshop ideas on like how to get people involved, kind of, I guess, what are the best like onboarding strategies of like, hey, bringing people in and like getting them interested or comfortable. Some folks come and they're like, a lot of graduate students have a crash course in R or like a rough relationship with R when they don't have like a more coding background. I'm one of those, but now, I'm trying to get more involved and get better at it. So just wanting to hear from you all.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being one of those community organizers. I see Greg has some thoughts here. You want to jump in, Greg?
Yeah, absolutely. So I could speak to, I work for Charles Schwab, and I lead the data science at Schwab user group. Our last meeting, we're actually trying to schedule something with Rachel and pos.it pretty soon for our next meeting. But our last meeting, I think we had a little over 230 or so users from across Schwab come in and hang out. But I'll just echo, like, it hasn't always been that way, right? We started out really small. We started out as an R user group, purely R. Moved to R and Python, then moved to data science. And when we were the R user group, it was basically the same 5 people who were just getting together monthly and presenting back and forth to each other. And I came in with zero R knowledge too, right? I was a SAS user, SQL user at the time, and wanting to learn R. And so everything was really cool to me, right? I mean, they were showing me like basics of dplyr, and I thought it was awesome. But we started small. I'd say a couple of things that we've always tried to emphasize, right, is that all levels of skills and ability are welcome. So we've got some folks who come in and bring neural networks and self-learning maps and just like really complicated financial topics that, you know, we've got PhDs presenting back to us. You know, the specifics of which are probably over a lot of people's heads, but everyone finds it really interesting. But we also encourage the person who like just learned how to do something cool in you know, in R and dplyr or in Python, whatever it is, right? If you've just learned the basics. We had somebody who was, you know, I was just posting about something I was pretty proud of. We had a user who figured out how to connect to our big data environment via Python rather than using the console. Like, those are just small wins. So like, if you can include everyone, I think is really good chance. Plus giving everyone a chance to present too. There's so many folks out there that the way that they really learn and really expand is by pushing themselves to present, even if it's something that they just learned themselves that might be, you know, on the more basic end. So that's really helped. And I remember 5 years ago when we started this, the R and Python community here was just so fractured and so small, and you really had to like, I mean, it was basically Google and Stack Overflow to figure out your answers. It still is to some extent, but now we have, you know, 200 something people who come together at least once a month, plus Teams channels and stuff, and we're all helping each other and deploying packages that we can all share and things like that. So, but just encourage you to keep it going.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's amazing to hear. Also, how much the group has grown, but also congrats on deploying your first Shiny app to Shiny Apps.io. I just saw that in the chat too.
Yeah. I've only deployed them internally for work before. This was like my first like personal app. And I was expecting like Linux and package dependency errors and all kinds of things. But man, Shiny Apps.io I was done in like 5 minutes.
On the community topic too, I feel like something helpful to just add or say too is I know like we do have a tendency to like celebrate as things get to be like really large groups, and that's amazing too when we have a ton of people engaged. But also even if you have a small group of people coming together once a month, that's awesome too. So it doesn't always have to be like a huge group too. Like we have a data science community builder coffee hour that we do once a month, and there's about maybe 7 of us that will join pretty frequently, and we always have great conversations there too. And that's been something I have to remind myself, like it doesn't have to be a huge group to be a successful community too. But I say that because if anybody is organizing communities and wants to be a part of that group, let me know in the chat here and I'll send a note over to you too. But Ted, I know you were kind of tagged on that question in the chat. Do you want to jump in here with any other thoughts too?
I think part of it, and I'll talk about this at POSIT is really making it easy for new members to contribute. And I think there's a lot of different models you can do that. And I'll talk about what we do in the Portland R user group, which is everyone kind of brings in their problems, and it kind of normalizes that you're having problems, that problems are okay, and that you don't need to know everything. So that's, you know, it's one of those things I feel like as a community organizer, you have to have a light touch with answering questions, like try to let the community answer it because it empowers people.
Absolutely. I was trying to type in the chat as well. I have this data science community builder Cordo site I've been building, but I want to keep making this better with thoughts from you all, and especially all the research and work you've been doing, Ted. I feel like we should incorporate that into it too, but I've just shared it in the chat.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Cool.
And the community builders talk or coffee hour is super fun. It's so just my plug.
Thank you. Let's see. George, I see you had a question about data governance. Want to jump in here?
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah, data governance. Yeah, specifically about APIs, if anyone has any experience with that, because we're I mean, we're generally just rolling out like a data governance effort at our company, and I'm in charge of my domain, but considering that we might start sharing data with others like citizen data scientists through not only traditional like reports in our system, but also through APIs. That's something that I never really touched before. I was just wondering if anyone has experience with best practices or any suggestions or any potential pitfalls that I'm not maybe looking at right now. Data governance.
Hey, George, this is Adrian. I mean, that's a loaded question because there's so much involved with governance. If you like, I mean, feel free to reach out to me and I could talk to you specifically about what we've done with several enterprise clients, because we've set up, I've personally set up, well, personally led a team with setting up enterprise data catalogs, which includes obviously governance. But I'll put my email in the chat and we could feel free to reach out to me afterwards.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Any other thoughts?
Maybe it would help if
I see Marlene unmuted, so she has some thoughts to share too.
Oh, I always have thoughts. Whether they're shareable is a whole nother question, right? So just so I'm clear, is your question more about the how-to or more of the logistics of sharing and or permissions based?
It's maybe not so much the logistics, but it's like
okay.
Because I think we're concerned, and then specifically I'm in HR, so I have like HR data, privacy, demographics, a lot of sensitive data, and making that available through API sounds pretty exciting to a lot of citizen data scientists. So they're like, yes, we can finally get some data, do our own analyses. I want to support that, but then I'm also like, that's a lot of data to put out there, and yeah, we can do security. So logistically, I'm not really all that concerned, but maybe more like from a expectation level or level setting or culture standpoint, like how do you roll that out to people? Anyone? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. Maybe more of that. But
I'll throw my email in the chat as well. So the last data set that I worked with APIs was around food safety data, which is super sensitive. That's basically like HIPAA data for all of us. That's what it is for the agricultural world. And so they are very sensitive about who gets to see what and who gets access and pushing and pulling of sensitive information. So if you want, we can chat about that. If you're at PositConf, then we can chat about it there, or we can connect on a Zoom call or email, whatever floats your boat.
yeah, cool. I will be there. So yeah, we'll send me your info and we'll meet up.
Okay, Jake, I see you had a question about mentors. Want to jump in here?
Oh yeah, just sometimes I get really in the weeds of some niche issue and I just really wish someone could just explain to me what I'm missing. And it seems to be out of scope for some of the places. It's not out of scope, but you know, I'll put it on Stack Overflow and it'll just sit for a month or, you know, and I kind of like want to fix it by end of day and I can see in my mind, like where, I don't know, I just wish I had someone I could tap on their shoulder and say, what's going on here? How do I get this thing working? Like I've done a lot of meta programming, just like reading in code as the data. I don't know. It's just, I find myself in these deep dives and then just get stuck.
I bet there's somebody that you can find here to be that person with you. Let's see. I see there's a lot of responses to Jake on here on this question. Does anybody want to jump in?
I just clapped instead of raising my hand because I don't know how reactions work. I have been doing something recently that has been super, super helpful, Jake, which is just having working sessions. In fact, I have one later today with a friend. I have them weekly, just getting on one-on-one with somebody for an hour or 90 minutes and working on stuff. And it's so helpful to just be able to talk something through with somebody and be like, I'm trying to do this and this isn't working. And sometimes somebody will say, oh, have you heard of this package? And I've never heard of it before. So even if they're not a mentor, peer mentoring has been really valuable for me. So I would encourage people. Yeah, it's not always somebody who has 10 years of experience over me. Sometimes it's somebody who has less experience than I do, who's like, oh, have you thought of this super basic solution? And maybe I was being too complicated in my head. Yeah.
That's great. And I see a lot of people have mentioned the R for data science Slack community too. And that's a great place to go join if you aren't in there already. And thank you, Saptarishi, for putting the link in there to join. I'll reshare it in the chat too. But I see some hands raised. Amanda, do you want to jump in?
Just really quickly, I wanted to agree completely with what Libby just said, because especially during the early pandemic, co-working was like awesome, just because I learned so much from people who were outside of my field. They were just friends across the country, and we would just be co-working, just working, and then you can shoot a question out, or I wonder about this or whatever. It also helps keep you motivated. But it's funny, I wanted to echo something Libby has said recently outside of this chat, that instead of necessarily thinking about, oh, I need a mentor for this, or I need, this type of person, focusing more on just building friends, like making friends in the community that you can then just text. And it's really, really difficult to do sometimes, especially because I know I'm an introvert, but just making more friends that you can text in that way is such a silly way to think of it, but it can really help.
Definitely. And I know I'll give a shout out here for Libby's lightning talk at the pos.it conference on making data friends too. Yeah, everybody feel free to plug your pos.it conference talks in the chat too, and share the links to them, because I would love to see how many people here are giving talks too. Zoe, I see your hands raised. Jump in.
Thanks. So it's kind of echoing really what people have said in the chat, and also Amanda in answer to Jake's question. I'm part of the NHSR community, and we have a Slack group. And so it's part of that, that you have a community when other people answer your questions for you. And even when I ask, I get people answering. And so my mentoring that I've had has been from whoever answers sometimes. And although I don't know people specifically, and I think it does hit that introversion level, we chat a lot through text, but I've never actually spoken to these necessarily people face to face. But I know that sometimes if I put a question out, certain people will latch on to these ones because they're so good at that particular area. And also what's really great is when somebody else says, I can't solve it either. Like, this is a big problem. Because you said, like, when you put it on Stack Overflow and then nobody answers for months, and you're like, is that just because I haven't worded it, or is everybody really this lost? It's really heartening to have a couple of people go, yeah, this just doesn't work. What's happening? And then at least you've kind of commiserated together and you're not alone anymore. So the mentoring has never really been one-to-one, but as you say, if you find friends, then you can go up to people and say, can you help me with this, particularly if it kind of strays into more career focus as opposed to problem focused. You can then trust people because you've kind of tested their technical knowledge as much as anything, and that you know that they're there for you when you're really struggling with stuff. So yeah, go about it a different way. I think maybe just like be part of the community. Just listening sometimes helps well. When we call them lurkers, I suppose, in Slack, and that's fine. That's great. People are really taking a lot away from the Slack groups.
I love that point, Zoe. It's just helpful sometimes to know somebody else can't do it either. Right? I wanted to circle back for a second to George's question before, because Alan, I see you shared some other thoughts in the chat. Is it okay if I kind of pull you in here to share
sure.
that?
I think my thoughts were sort of regardless of the sort of like rollout method, the way you make that kind of data available, I think being sort of a facilitator or enabler, kind of as long as it takes, is really important, so that you set up really clear expectations about, like, what is this data good for? What does it support well versus what does it not support well? And that way you can sort of be riding along, helping people think about, like in your case, compliance issues or those kinds of things in particular. And it's a whole lot easier. And we found this over the course of trying to sort of course correct some big, long kind of multi-year projects. It's a whole lot easier to do that at the beginning than later. So it's really exciting to roll stuff out. And also it's really, really helpful and important to sort of like everybody look around the table and you go, okay, wait, let's do this slowly. Let's do this really carefully. But it's a real balance of like feeling success on the part of your team and your mission, and setting up your stakeholders for longer term kind of success and stability and stuff.
Thanks so much, Alan. I know we are getting to the end of our hour here, so I wanted to see if there were any questions I perhaps missed from the chat here that you wanted to ask everybody. Feel free to raise your hand. But I love just getting to scroll through the chat as we're having the conversation too, and just see some of the things that people are celebrating too, which is why I asked before we leave, what are some things that everybody's proud of this past week? It's always a fun way to kind of learn a little bit more about people this way. Like Marlene, I saw you just reached a new goal in lifting. Like I just scrolled past that in the chat. I see about Shiny apps being deployed. So I always love to hear those things in the chat too. Any other questions? Oh, people started journaling. Okay, my thing I'm proud of is that I did my maid of honor speech last weekend and successfully got up there and didn't cry or get too emotional through it. Which is okay,
Rachel,
but I made my way through it.
What was your final wedding attendance count for the summer? I know you were going to lots of weddings.
We still have 2 more, but it was 8. But we had 3 last weekend.
Oh my gosh. 3 in 1 weekend?
They were great though. Let's see. Also, on what people are proud of, I see Mike pointing out to his YouTube video. I just watched that video, Mike. It was amazing. So highly recommend everybody checking it out. Anybody have anything else they want to share?
Thanks. That was shameless promo.
Wait, I don't see the YouTube video.
Mike's a rock star. If nobody knew that yet.
Oh, there it is. I see it.
So is Ted, but he keeps it very quiet.
Ted, we need some YouTube videos there too.
Oh, I guess Cascade are.
Nice. Well, thank you all so much for joining today and hanging out with us. Thanks for kind of bearing with us all too as we figure out how to do these without a featured leader and having us all join in the conversation. I thought that was fun today. Thank you all. Have a great rest of the day and see you either virtually for POS.it or maybe in person next week too. Bye, everybody.
Awesome. It's great to hang out.
See y'all later.
Bye-bye.